Welcome to my channel, Brande Arno Fine Art. Today we're going to work on this bison. It's a Yellowstone bison, and I took the image on a trip to Yellowstone several years ago. So I'm working from that image and then using my imagination to create a snow scene, because that is what my customer wanted. He wanted a bison in a snow scene with aspens, evergreens, and purple shadows. Let's see what happens. So I gave you a preview of how the painting worked out. So now let's see the steps I took to get there. The customer has approved this line drawing. So now we're going to start with the block in. And that means it's going to get really ugly before it gets better. Watch and see what happens. I'm not using full color here, but suggestion of color. Now I'm suggesting the evergreens, and it's just the base color. There's going to be a lot happening afterwards. All right, so they're starting to line up like soldiers. So I'm going to remove a couple of these trees and try to bring a little bit more tension into the background. So now I'm going to start the snow in the background, and it's darker than it will be when I'm finished. But it is more on the blue side, and that's because I want to have atmosphere. Everything that's in the background is mixed in with the light of the sky. So it would make sense that you would have a bluish gray tone going into the background areas of your painting. Quickly laying in a basic tone for the snow all through the rest of the painting. Okay, so now we're dealing with the cast shadow of the bison. That would be a very boring, dull color. No, I take that back. It'll be a nice lavenderish, purple, gray color when we get to the final stages. Here I want to keep this a little bit darker, almost like a cast shadow, but that is for compositional purposes. I want your eye to jump into the painting, and the one way to do that is to have a dark patch right on the bottom. So even though we don't have any part of the bison started, much less finished, you can already see the atmospheric perspective. It does look like the trees are in the distance. And now I've made a decision that I want to introduce some sky color into the tree line, just to soften them up a bit. That will help also with atmospheric perspective. Let's get working on that bison. This is the part of the bison that is lighter than the rest of his body, and it has a lot of delicious, wonderful texture. I say that as an artist. What you see me putting down here is just base colors. There will be so much more that's going to happen afterwards. I'm using this darker tone where all the dark areas of the buffalo or bison would be. Okay, and then I'm going to lighten it up as it comes up around the belly to the top of the body. But first, we'll get really dark with the face and the head. This is what most folks call the ugly part of a painting, and it really is. Sometimes you look at what you laid in, these basic tones, and you see the whole thing after you're done laying in all the basic tones, and you say, oh my gosh, this is really ugly. But it is the foundation. You really do have to do this part. You just can't go right into detail. You have to lay the foundation. And so that's what I'm doing right now. After finishing the block in, and this often happens because I do see shapes better than lines, but I noticed that I have some errors in my drawing, so I'm fixing those now, especially the bison's head. You can see that I need to lengthen the legs. They're just a little too short here. To watch me do something that I learned the hard way is the best thing to do. When there's a big mistake, scrape it off and start over. Don't be afraid to do this. Yeah, we got a big mess on our hands. I'm not intimidated though. You can easily see by the marks left behind, the shadows left behind, as opposed to the new lines, just how far off I was drawing the bison. More adjustments to that head and neck. Now I'm reestablishing the darkest dark area of the head, and then we'll start with the buildup of texture. But first, let's get rid of that mess that I have left over from wiping out the bison's head. And now let's reestablish the tail. Um, you know, animals lift their tails up to do you know what, so you want to make sure it doesn't look like that's going to happen next. I do have to say that I really like this drawing much, much better. I'm so glad I took the time to wipe it out and start over again. This is the time in the paintings construction when you do things like that. Otherwise, you're going to paint yourself into a hole. And what do I mean really by saying I'm going to paint myself into a hole? What I mean is in the past when I was trying to gain my skills, I might have had a mistake that was in the drawing, but I thought, well, if I just finish it off better, if I just make this adjustment or that adjustment, anything but wipe it off, when really I needed to wipe it off. So that is something that each artist has to learn on their own. When it's too late and you have to start over, or when you can make more adjustments and it makes it better. It looks like I'm carrying that same blue all the way down. It's a grayish blue, but I feel like at this time I need to do that. And while I'm correcting things, I am deciding that I need to add more green into the colors for the upper back and shoulder area for that bison. There is some reflected light here. Now for the lighter part of this upper back. I am using a Rosemary & Co. number 10 flat Shiraz brush. All right, now here you're going to see me begin texturizing, and I'm starting the process by just rolling my brush, and that does create a certain kind of texture. You'll see other ways of creating texture soon. These next passages, you'll see I have a fully loaded brush, and I'm just doing one brush stroke, maybe two, and that's it. All right, now this is another tool that I have. It's just a rubberized paintbrush, but it really does help with applying paint. It's kind of like a combination palette knife paintbrush. It's very flexible though, and I do like it. Here you see me bringing that textured hair down around the neck to meet with the shoulder. And one of my favorite painting tools is my fingers. Next will be some frost on the pumpkin, or in this case, snow on the bison. Let's fill in the back of this bison to get rid of that drawing line. Now you're going to see my brush just work all over the bison. Now it looks like I'm just spreading paint around, but I am trying to be mindful of the muscle structure of the bison, and I'm trying to work the shadows and the lights to highlight that. And then for this area, I'm putting in blue tones, which would reflect some of the snow. And up here, I decided to go with the palette knife because I want to lay in a lot of color at one time, and I need to work a large area. Oh, and you just saw me steal some paint. Using the palette knife to spread a lot of color and then the brush to work it in. Here I'm going to indicate where the light would hit the back of the leg. And I'm doing that by just bringing out some of the fur in a lighter color. Also doing the same thing to bring out muscle structure in the leg. Now let's smooth out this drawing line. Now you're going to see me use a dry brush to blend this area. The trick here is to make sure that the brush is totally dry, that it's on the soft side, and that you don't put too much pressure on. Then, when you're finished, you immediately have to clean that brush really well by just kind of scrubbing it into a cloth or paper towel. Now I've taken out my maul stick and I'm going to try to draw in the start of some aspen trees. That was one of the things that the person who commissioned me for this painting requested. The goal here is to have some variety. The last thing I want is like all in a row, like soldiers lined up. You want to have some variety showing depth if possible. So the photo that I'm working from has rather thin aspen trees. So you're going to see that they are going to kind of look the same. I'm going to thicken some of them up, but here I'm applying the lighter color, and you notice it's not white. I'm going lighter here, but it is not white. It just looks white. You remember this tool from earlier. I'm using it to drag the color across to indicate the direction of the bark. I do plan to add branches, but that will come at the last part of this painting. Adding more variety in the trees and the shrubbery. Let's begin suggesting the ground. I'm going to bring out the liner brush for some detail. Here I'm making a decision to bring that tree further in the background. And that's because of the soldier effect. I don't want 1, 2, 3 in a row. So I'm doing some detail now to the fallen trees, applying snow on top. And now we're going to start more serious work on the snow. Notice the different grips on the brush. This allows me to have more variety in the brushwork. You will notice that I am pushing paint around quite a bit, and that's a technique that you learn over the years of practice. Here you'll see me use the snow to carve out the face of the bison. This is another example of negative painting. Here you'll notice me bringing in some of the browns, although a little bit cooler, with the shrubbery. I'm using the snow to indicate a pathway for the eye to travel back further into the painting.